An Introduction to the Science of Hadith by Ibn Salah al-Shahrazuri. 577 to 643. The most influential work in the science of Hadith in existence. D. We heard that Abu Abdullah Ahmad ibn Hanbal, God be pleased with him, said, "Follow the speech of the teacher in regard to his saying, he transmitted to us, he transmitted to me, I heard, and he informed us, and do not go beyond it. For the material you find in books composed of the transmissions of people earlier than you may not change the hadith indicated with, he informed us. In that very book too, he transmitted to us, and the like. That is because, if there exists a disagreement over putting one term in place of the other, and there exists a precedent for making a distinction between them, it is possible that the person using one of them is one of those who does not regard them as equivalent. If you were to find an isnad of that description, and you knew that its transmitter regarded the terms as equivalent, then your replacing one of them with the other would come under the heading of permitting transmission by paraphrase. This would be true even if it were a well-known difference between the terms observed by others. We think it is best to avoid doing anything along these lines in regard to changing the contents of books and collections of hadith, as we will, God exalted, willing, discuss below. What Abu Bakr al-Khatib said in his Kifaya about doing that is disputed, and in our view it refers to the hadith a student hears from the speech of a transmitter, and not something recorded in a written composition. God knows best. E. Scholars disagree over the soundness of the audition of someone who copies at the time of the recitation. It is reported on the authority of Ibrahim al-Harbi, the expert Abu Ahmed ibn Adi, the professor Abu Ishaq Isfarayini, the expert in practical and theoretical law, and others rejected it. We heard Abu Bakr Ahmed ibn Ishaq as-Sibghi, one of the authorities of the Shafi'is in Khurasan, who was asked about the student who writes during audition. He said he should say, I attended, hadartu, and not he transmitted to us, or he informed us. It is reported from Musa ibn Harun al-Hammal permitted copying during the audition, and that Abu Hatim al-Razi said, I wrote in Arim's class while he was reciting, and I wrote in Amr ibn Marzuq's class while he was reciting. It is also reported that one text was recited to Abdullah ibn Mubarak while he copied another. There is no difference between the copying of the auditor and the copying of the person who validates the audition. Making a distinction is superior to these blanket declarations. Our opinion is that the audition is not valid when the copying is such that the student cannot comprehend what is being recited. So that sound which reaches his ears is like background noise. The audition is valid if, while copying, comprehension is not impossible for him, as was the case in what we heard regarding the hadith expert and scholar Abu al-Hasan al-Daraqutni. In his youth, he attended the class of Ismail as-Saffar. He sat copying a whole volume in his possession while Ismail was dictating. One of those in attendance said to him, Your audition is not valid while you copy. Daraqutni replied, My comprehension of the dictation is different from yours. Then Daraqutni said to the man, Do you recall how many hadith the teacher has dictated until now? He said, No. Daraqutni said, He has dictated 18, and the hadith were counted and found to be as he said. Then Daraqutni said, The first hadith was X from Y, and its text reads such and such. The second was A from B, and its text was such and such. He kept giving isnads and texts of hadith in the order they were dictated until he reached the last of them. The people were astonished by him. God knows best. F. The distinction we described in regard to copying applies equally to the cases when the teacher or the auditor is holding a conversation, or the reciter speaks too quickly or murmurs so that some of the words are inaudible, or the auditor is too far from the reciter, and similar cases. It is obvious that in each of these cases, missing a small amount, a word or two, may be excused. If this is the case, it is recommended that the teacher permit all the auditors to transmit the entire volume or book which they heard, even if the term audition, sama', is to be applied to all of it. When he grants his written authorization, khat, for that book to be one of them, he should write, He heard this book from me, and I hereby give him permission to relate it from me, or something like this. Just as some of the earlier teachers used to do. One of the things we hear from the Andalusian jurist Abu Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Attab was that his father, God be pleased with both of them, said, "In audition, licensing is indispensable." Because sometimes the reciter makes mistakes and the teacher ignores it, or the teacher makes mistakes if he is reciting and the auditor ignores it. So the portion the student missed is restored to him by licensing. What we have mentioned is an excellent solution. Indeed, we heard Salih ibn Ahmed ibn Hanbal, God be pleased with them, say, "I said to my father, when the teacher slurs a word, it is known to be such and such, and this is not understood from him. Do you think that the student should relate the correct wording from him?" He said, "I hope that there will be no difficulty in him doing this." On the other hand, we read from Khalaf ibn Salim al-Mukharrimi, who said, "I heard Ibn Uyayna saying, Amr ibn Dinar said to us," meaning Amr ibn Dinar transmitted to us, "Haddathana." However, he limited himself to the noon and alif of Haddathana when he was told, "Say, Amr transmitted to us." He said, "I will not say it because I did not hear 3 letters of his utterance, Haddathana, and they were Haddatha on the account of the great crowd." The crowds in the classes of many of the great transmitters of Hadith used to be very large, sometimes reaching thousands and thousands. Repetitors conveyed the Hadith from the teachers to the crowds, so the students actually wrote the Hadith down from the teachers, through the intermediary of the conveyance of the assistants. More than one of the experts permitted students to relate that material from the dictator, without mentioning the intervening repetitor. We heard Al-A'mash, God be pleased with him, say, we were in the classes of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, and the teaching circle became very large. Many times he related the Hadith, and those at that distance from him could not hear it, so they asked one another what he had said. They then related these Hadith directly from him, as well as those that did actually hear it from him. We heard that a man asked Hamad ibn Zayd about a similar question, saying, "Abu Ismail, what is your opinion?" He said, "Ask those around you." We also heard the repetitor Abu Muslim said to Ibn Uyayna, "Many of the people cannot hear the Hadith." He said, "Can you hear them?" He said, "Yes," and Ibn Uyayna replied, "Then make them hear them." Others rejected that. We heard from Khalaf ibn Tamim, who said, "I heard that 10,000 Hadith from Sufyan al-Thawri, and I used to ask my companion in class for the ones I did not hear clearly. I told that to Za'idah, and he said to me, 'Transmit from these Hadith only what you have preserved with your heart and heard with your own ears,' so I cast them away." We also heard that Abu Nu'aym al-Fadl al-Dukayn felt it necessary to transmit from his fellow students the Hadith from Sufyan and A'mash, from which he missed a single word or name he had to ask his fellows for, not thinking that anything else was possible for him. The first view represents an extreme lack of rigour. Indeed, we heard that the expert Abu Abdullah ibn Manda al-Isbahani said to one of his students, "X, for you smelling a Hadith is enough for audition." This statement should either be interpreted to referring to something else, or be left with the person who said it. I found from the expert Abdul Ghani ibn Sa'id, from the expert Hamza ibn Muhammad with his isnad, that Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi said, "Smelling a Hadith is enough for you." Abdul Ghani said, Hamza said to us, "Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi means that when the person was asked about the beginning of something, that is the Hadith, he recognized it. It does not refer to laxity in audition. God knows best. Stay tuned."